Shavua Tov, Israel briefers from all around the world, and welcome to another week, another edition of the Israel Brief with me, Rolene Marks, where we take a look at your top stories making the headlines right here in Israel. We do it every Monday to Thursday, and this week we are back to a full house. No more holidays or chagim. We are back to every Monday to Thursday. As always, the Israel Brief is brought to you in partnership with these guys, Lay of the Land. Now, every week we put out a newsletter. It goes to our subscriber base, and if you would like to receive the newsletter, please be in touch with us via our website. Another reminder that if you have a question you would like answered on the Israel Brief, please be in touch with us as well via our social media or website. And today we have not one, but two audience questions. And of course, every Thursday, you guys choose your mentions, your great people, and your morons of the week, and I announce them. So put your thinking caps on, guys. Keep an eagle eye on the news, and let me know who your picks for mensch and moron are for the week. Nevertheless, it is day 745. We are still counting those days until we get every single hostage back, until we are satisfied that we have moved through all the phases of the peace plan and everything has been agreed to. We will still be counting down those days. It's very interesting. People say to me, do we have peace or do we have a ceasefire? I wouldn't go as far as to say we have peace, but we definitely have a ceasefire, and more about that in a second. But I also remind you, we still have the remains of 16 of our brothers held hostage inside the Gaza Strip. For us in Israel, the hostage crisis is not over. These pins cannot come off until every single one of them is back home. I know that there are people around the world saying, well, we got the living hostages back. We can take off the yellow ribbons. We can take down the signs. For us in Israel, until the absolute last one comes home for burial, we still have a hostage crisis. So let's take a look at those top stories, and we begin with news that Hamas broke the ceasefire yesterday. So what happened? Now, President Trump believes it could be rebels within Hamas, but what we know is that several Hamas terrorists breached the yellow line. This is the demarcated line that basically delineates. Oh, my English is terrible today. The no-go zone. Palestinians have been warned not to come over the yellow line into Israeli-controlled territory. Well, yesterday, several terrorists managed to breach that line, and they attacked several IDF troops who were acting in accordance with the ceasefire and assembling several active shafts. And they fired anti-tank missiles, which killed two soldiers who both actually happened to come from the city of Modi'in, where I live, and injuring several others. This was a blatant violation of the ceasefire, and Israel responded by conducting airstrikes very close to Rafah and fired on an operational shaft. The Rafah crossing was also closed, and according to some reports has reopened for the distribution of aid. Meanwhile, the IDF have said that they are committed to fulfilling the ceasefire. President Trump, commenting on the incident, said that any violations by Hamas will be handled toughly but properly. The remains of several more hostages were returned to Israel over the course of the last couple of days, including the remains of a Thai worker, as well as Ronen Engel from Kibbutz Nir Oz, and Eliyahu Margalit. Those remains have been returned to Israel. Meanwhile, former hostages have been laid to rest. Uriel Baruch was laid to rest in Jerusalem yesterday, and Inbal Haman, who was the last female hostage whose remains were held captive, was laid to rest on Friday. Meanwhile, several of the living hostages that Israel received back last week have been discharged from hospital. Now, many of you might be puzzled at that, given the extreme physical trauma and mental trauma that they have encountered, but there are assigned medical teams tailored to each individual and their needs, to look after their emotional and mental health, for their rehabilitation physically, and of course for their nutritional needs. And these teams will work with these hostages for outpatient treatment for a very long time. You know, some people have said, is it wise to discharge these hostages so soon? And this weekend we had the first Shabbat where they were home with their families, and a lot of the thought around that is that these hostages have been deprived of love, of light, of comfort, and being around their families for so long that it actually helps their rehabilitation to be in a warm environment, to be able to eat whatever food they can eat specifically, that makes them feel safe and that makes them feel comfort. And it's really great to see that they're reunited, not just with their families, but also with former hostages that were held with them. And they've had some very lovely visits, including from various Israeli celebrities. The IDF Chief of Staff has visited them. President Herzog and his wife has visited them. And of course, Israel is showing our former hostages as much love as humanly possible, while respecting their space. And I'm sure when they are ready to speak, they will share their stories with all of us. But we were also notified today that the IDF is preparing to receive the remains of another hostage a little later today. We thought that this might have happened yesterday. Hamas said if the ground conditions were better, they say that they need a certain amount of equipment to access where the remains of hostages are kept. They've also tried to stall and play psychological games, saying they don't have access to all of the deceased hostages, which former hostages have said is absolutely untrue. In fact, they were forced to sleep in the same area as deceased hostages. So we will keep you updated on that tomorrow. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has said that if Prime Minister Netanyahu had to enter Canada, that he would be arrested. Now, this was during an interview with Bloomberg Television, and Carney, who, like his predecessor Justin Trudeau, have said that they will honour the arrest warrants put out by the ICC, that is the International Criminal Court. Now, Canada has long been an ally, a strategic ally of Israel, and as you can imagine, relations between the two countries have, I wouldn't say soured, but they are not as warm as they have been in previous administrations. Carney just last month recognizing a Palestinian state, which Israel sees as rewarding terrorism, especially as we still have a hostage crisis. We still have Hamas attacking not just our troops, but also civilians in the Gaza Strip, including, according to some reports, a 5-year-old little boy who they accused of spying. Yes, just absorb that for a second. And of course, we haven't heard anything from all the culprits who have screamed genocide and all kinds of accusations at Israel. Now, Israel is not a signatory to the Rome Statute, which is the foundational document of the ICC. So technically, the ICC does not have jurisdiction over Israel, and in this case, the arrest warrants for the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Meanwhile, Israel lost its appeal to the ICC to have the warrants dropped. The ICC have said that they reject the appeal. They say they have reasonable grounds to issue these arrest warrants, and Israel in the meantime denies all allegations. Now let's end today's broadcast on some positive news, and Israel welcomed the election of Rodrigo Paz in Bolivia. This is the first kind of center-right or businessman, I've forgotten the word, candidate. There we go, guys. I tell you, I don't like to reshoot. I like you guys to see me warts and all, mistakes and all. Well, Rodrigo Paz is the first candidate that is not a socialist for decades. Now, Israel and Bolivia historically have had good relations, great relations with the Bolivian government and the Jewish people. However, after the attacks of October the 7th, in fact, as soon as November 2023, Bolivia broke off bilateral ties with Israel, accusing Israel of crimes against humanity. And Israel is hoping now with a new president-elect that those ties can be re-established. Rodrigo Paz acknowledged receiving warm wishes from the Israeli government, and we look forward to hopefully re-establishing bilateral ties with Bolivia. Meanwhile, on Friday, the Nobel laureate and opposition leader Cecile Machado of Venezuela phoned Prime Minister Netanyahu and expressed her solidarity with the people of Israel, with the state of Israel, and congratulated the Prime Minister for his victory over Iran and Hamas. And she said in that conversation that Iran are also instigating and interfering with domestic issues in Venezuela. So let's see what the future holds. So that's it from me for today, guys. Let's take a look at your audience question. And question number 1 comes from Sylvia, who wants to know, what are the conditions of the 2 hostages, Eviatar David and Ron Breslavsky? Those are the 2 hostages that we saw in those horrendous psychological warfare videos put out by Hamas. We are all familiar of the horrific scenes of Eviatar David, skeletal, being forced to dig his own grave, and Ron Breslavsky in such a state of deterioration that he actually couldn't stand. He was crying on screen. So Eviatar and Ron both returned home to Israel last week. Eviatar's father addressed the media last week. He said he's very, very thin, and he is missing a lot of vitamins and minerals in his system, and of course has experienced a big trauma, but hopefully he will start to make process. He said he'll be okay. At the moment he's very weak, but he will start to get back the muscle mass, the minerals, and everything that is needed. It was really, really moving to see Eviatar reunited with his best friend, who was also taken captive and also released last week, Guy Gilboa Dalal, also very, very thin. In fact, Guy's got some damage to his one ear as a result of the kidnapping and what happened in captivity. But lovely to see them reunited, and lovely to hear from Eviatar's siblings saying they're just so happy to have him home. They can hug him, they can kiss him, they can help him on that long road to recovery. We also have Ron Breslavsky, who was actually discharged from hospital earlier today, also very, very thin. What was very moving was when he was handed over to the IDF, you could see him in tears, crying just at the joy of being able to see the sky, to see the sun. One report I read said he doesn't like too many people around him, which we can understand, and that he loves to look at the sky. There's a beautiful picture that was released last week of him wrapped in an Israeli flag, standing at the window of his hospital room, just looking at the sunset. And what is so beautiful is that so many people, thousands of people from around the world, have been sending on social media, wherever they can, beautiful nature scenes of the sky, of sunsets, of sunrises, in the hope that it'll bring joy to Ram, that it'll bring him comfort. He seems to find a lot of comfort for himself in looking at the sky. So if we have any more updates, I will definitely let you know, Sylvia. And our other question comes from Tracy. She says, what happens if Hamas messes around and does not return all the hostages? Well, Tracy, that would be a violation of the ceasefire agreement. And I think what would happen if they are unable to do that is that the mediators would have to meet again. And you can be sure that this will be dealt with in the strongest terms, not just by Israel, but by the Americans, who have said that all hostages must return, no exceptions, the living and the dead. So we are watching this carefully, and the onus is now on Hamas. And the Americans have said they're treating Hamas with good faith now, that they will return all those hostages. But you can be sure that anything less than all of them being returned will not be accepted. So guys, that's it from me for today. Don't forget to check out our website at www.layoftheland.online. Our YouTube channel is right at the Israel Brief. We would love it if you hit that red subscribe button. We are on LinkedIn at Rolene Marks, on Substack at Rolene Marks, on Instagram at Rolene_Marks, and on X at Lay of the Land 5. So guys, God bless you. Mwah! A big kiss to all of you, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.